Hello Mudlarking friends, I've got someone with me today. This is Alessio Cecconi. I wondered. So this is Alessio. He is also known as London Madlark on Instagram, so you can check him out on there. We're going to have a look at some bone items today. Worked bone, decorative bone items, through to actual bone as it's found on the foreshore. We've got the whole lot, so stick with us and you'll learn some more about bones. Let's go. All right, Alessio, here we go. Here's what we prepared earlier. So thank you for bringing this stuff in. So this stuff,
my pleasure.
Kind of mine, this stuff yours. So it's listed kind of in date order, is that right?
So, I mean, this is kind of the most modern, but it's still Victorian, so we would say 19th century.
Yeah, and these are toothbrushes.
We started, it's all bone. We have toothbrushes.
Yeah.
This was probably just simply a brush, maybe for clothing or
Yeah.
for shoes. We have a bone, is presumably Victorian for both the shape and where it was found.
Yeah.
You know, it looks quite homemade,
It
very
does
regular.
To me too. I can imagine someone making that at
Carving
home,
it.
carving away. And yeah.
It's sometimes they were made at home. Sometimes they were actually more still handmade.
Right.
But you know, at that industrial level,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell because bone deteriorates and cracks very easily.
Right.
So it may look quite irregular, but originally probably was quite shiny.
You
like
can
these
still make out the
toothbrushes.
shape, can't you? And that sort of, and the striations in bone, and that kind of shine it gets anyway. You can.
It does.
You can make out
You
exactly
can.
what
You
it was.
can.
Oh, you know, just quickly, I love these. On these brushes, you can see condor, I think.
You have boots here.
Boots the chemist. I've got some at home too, with addresses and names. And I've got, there's a really famous chemist. Oh goodness me, something Bell of Croydon.
I've not
Really
heard of
well-known, big old-fashioned chemist. Anyway, I've got one of those. So then we've got Dominoes.
We got Dominoes. Again, this will be probably, Georgian to Victorian most likely.
Yeah.
This looks like the older one.
Well, you know, these are interesting. I'm just reading at the moment Henry Mayhew's London Labour and London Poor.
Yes.
And he's talking about the costermonger boys and the street sellers and their favourite games, apart from tossing the pie man, another story, were dominoes. And they often made these. So, you know, you can imagine, I'm not saying it is a costermonger's domino, but it's really evocative of that time.
It's very
isn't
evocative, and like we, for other finds made of bone, you can tell that this one was definitely kind of, homemade, handmade by somebody, because you still see the marks of the cutting and making the bone like a thin slice.
And it's kind of, it's got that irregular. Okay, it might have been wear or abrasion in the water, but
look at the tree, for example, where the spacing between the circles is irregular, and there is an overlapping between two of the numbers.
What do you think they would have been in? Do you think they would have been inlaid with something?
Probably they were inlaid with something. Again, in general, some of them would have been. This is because it's so kind of handmade. Probably wasn't.
Yeah.
I even wonder if this was a discarded piece,
Oh,
because you see
maybe
that there is a
so.
crack and it was irregular, so probably they started making it broke and they decided to toss it away.
True enough. And sometimes they're actually double layers, aren't they? You have the black and the white.
They are.
Sandwich.
And in fact, this pin inside is a metal pin. It's what was linking the bone part with the back, which was usually wood.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to ask you why that's there, but
yeah.
There we go. It
was the link
itself.
between the two. There was no glue at the time, at least that could be used.
Of
So you would
course.
use like metal rods to connect items.
That's fascinating. Oh, I love those. So over here, one thing that really caught my eye was this. I thought this might have been a page turner, but actually what it is...
Well, at least this is what I've been told by somebody that makes books.
Bookbinders.
By bookbinders. I think this was a tool for bookbinding. So when you have, when they had a large piece of paper, they would fold it.
Yeah.
And then to make sure that they could cut it, and they would just use this tool.
Yeah.
It would not stretch the paper, and it would just make sure
but
that...
it makes the text block tight.
It does.
So it can be... So that's after sewing, after the binding.
That's after the sewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And the feel of that is just so shiny.
The texture is incredible. It's
Yeah.
so tactile, and something again quite unique is that it looks quite industrial and homemade and precise.
does.
But if you look here, because it's bone, you actually see the roughness
You can,
of the
yeah.
core of the bone. And
Yeah.
that's how, why I like bone so much. Even a piece that was made in a series, it's each one of them is still special. That's exactly the piece that probably was used. It was a rib.
Yeah.
And so you still have kind of an analogy
because
between
that is
the two
very
of them.
thin, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
even if you get that so thin,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you're going to have that.
Absolutely. And because it's curved,
Yeah.
it's bent, you know, in order to make this flat, you need to kind of cut it. And therefore you would still have, you know, you still need to compromise a portion where you meet the core.
Where shall we go next? There is such a plethora of finds.
There's so much stuff. You know what? Something that is usually ignored by mudlarks, and that I still have a lot of fascination and respect for, are the offcuts.
Yeah,
because we look at all these beautiful finds, but there is a history behind. There is a larger piece that needs to be respected. You know, which is what the original piece of bone would look like.
Yeah.
And here we have some of them. I keep collecting them.
I've got a number of these at home, but likely we'll never know exactly what they're from, unless it's something obvious like a button offcut.
Something like in this case. So probably these were for beads offcuts. And
because of the depth, maybe you think?
The depth, but also so in this case it's really the depth, you're right.
Yeah.
In this case it's also the size, it's really small.
Yeah.
Well, something that starts being slightly larger, like this one, it could start becoming a button.
Yeah.
Which then the equivalent would be something like this.
We've got buttons here to check,
yeah,
brilliant.
And you can kind of match together.
And that that's a button form, isn't it?
It is a button form.
For an 18th century, so I've got a couple
It's beautiful.
here. Now, is this horn? Is it ivory? Is it bone? What? We've diverted slightly, but
no, it's a good question, and I would like a big premise. I'm not a bone expert.
Yeah,
this is just
me neither.
So what I've been, taught is the color is not necessarily diagnostic.
That's right, because ivory can be dark.
Can be dark, and bone can be whitened under specific burial, circumstances, or under some chemical reactions. It can be bleached. So that's not the only thing, but there are some elements that can tell you what ivory is, and it's a specific series of structures that you see. So this is actually a piece of an offcut of an ivory piece. So it's a tusk of an elephant. And once you start looking here on the corner, you see this crisscross,
this wibbly stuff.
There's wibbly striations. Now you have it in bone. Well, it looks like a diamond, but this is kind of the structure of the ivory.
Yeah.
That makes it different from bone, where you usually don't have these kind of striations.
And they're from 18th century silk wrapped buttons generally, aren't they? I can't remember, they've got a name.
I can't remember either. I mean, that's again, it's very hard to date bone, as for many other items, unless you do.
But these specifically, with they can be more easily dated, to a more specific time.
So sometimes it's just the shape of something that makes it diagnostic in terms of age, even if.
Exactly. Yeah, these offcuts, I'm with you. I mean, I would love to find, it's not bone, shell. I'd love to find a shell like the mother of pearl nacre offcut. That would be super. So what we're going to do now is do a bit of a bone, is it something else test, because there are things that I'm really unsure about when it comes to bone. For example, this one here, I've been like, is that bone or is that some kind of plastic? You think?
From the cracking, I saw it there and I said, yes, it's bone. Now I see it here and I'm thinking that probably this is bakelite.
It's got, and here's another suspect.
It's the cracking.
Now this is one here that I didn't doubt for a second was bone, but Alessio, your take is?
I think it's
bakelite, maybe.
It's even something.
Or some other kind of early 20th century
materials,
resin, plasticky.
Yeah, because what you can see is something that you see like in these older offcut, right? So you see that in the hole you have the double drilling from both sides. So it makes it kind of made less industrially, but this would still be done on bakelite or either.
So same method, but actually material not so. And now I'm looking at it inside, it does look very shiny, and I can't see any of the striations that you would normally see
in the bone.
So I'm hello.
Don't steal our bones.
Hello, what do you think about this? Okay then,
It's not.
This is not bone. All right, so we've got some more bone buttons here, and yet you can tell very obviously. And this one's interesting with the five.
The five holes.
Yeah.
The use of the fifth hole, you know, it's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
Was it used just for threads like the other four? Was it used decorative?
Yeah.
To add a bead or something in the middle?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Many theories about it, but I don't know if there is a proven one.
No. Okay. So I've seen in passing, skimming around on the internet about 5-hole, and I don't think I spent too much time on it. But yes, there wasn't really an answer for why. But that is a really interesting one. I don't think I've ever found a 5-hole button
Of bone.
Of bone. There we go. What is that little
This
thing?
one?
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the mysteries. I don't know the answer. The answer is I don't know, but
So-
I decided to bring it with me.
Yeah.
Because some finds, you know, you just keep them because definitely it's handmade.
Oh gosh, and you can see that lovely on the back
Yes, you see
where it's been sliced.
it's been sliced, but then you see that there's many facets. And if you look
Yes.
carefully, it looks like they had a sort of a carving little pen.
like notches.
And they were just scraping it away after a first kind of quick abrasion, making all these facets, right? Then what they did, it was use some turning tool
Yeah.
to not just make the circle, but also to make them drill a hole in the middle.
How interesting.
So at first I thought it could be the cap of a needle case, which I actually have here. They
Yes.
has been identified by the floor as a 17th century needle case made of bone.
That is beautiful, isn't it? And
17th, 18th century.
Wow. Quite thick, isn't it? The walls of it, or the.
It is, and you would wonder then that because it doesn't have another cavity to then
It doesn't have threads.
fit.
Does it? But it could have.
It could have been just a push, you know,
Yeah.
and pull.
Yeah.
But then if you think about how small the cylinder, the cavity was,
Yeah.
then you wonder like what was inside.
How
It was
many
just like
needles?
and then do you need a needle case for one needle?
Yeah.
The other thing I thought, which I'm doing some research, is then there are Viking gaming piece
Oh, that is an interesting.
that have
thought.
this identical shape,
Right.
but they're made of lead. So
Ah.
my question is, you know, Vikings, we know that they've, you know, have reached these coasts and these
Yes, of
lands.
course,
So
yeah.
is there a chance that they influenced the locals and
Of
therefore
course,
instead of
because
making
when they were invading and doing their thing, pillaging and plundering, they would then sometimes be among the population before they went off again.
and maybe play games, and therefore
Yeah.
it was easier to make them at home, you know, to use bone
Yeah.
rather than.
That's a lovely little
lead.
thing, though, isn't it? That is. Have you sent this to any?
I haven't. I haven't.
Bone people. That is really interesting.
I haven't.
Well, there we are. So a mystery for now, but you may get an answer on that at
We will-
some
yes,
point.
I hope so.
I'll put that back there, and then this beautiful needle case. I mean, that's gorgeous, isn't it?
I have to make a confession about this.
Yes.
So I've collected it
Yeah.
during one of my very first larks.
Right.
And I picked it up, I looked at it, and I thought, this is bakelite. So I did the other mistake. So what I did is I put it in the backpack
Yeah.
to throw it away.
No.
And then I was on the foreshore and I said, oh, you know, let me keep it. And I did it twice.
So that nearly was chucked away twice.
Twice. And then it stayed in my backpack. And one day I see some mudlarks and I say, do you know what this is? And it was actually Anna Borzello.
Right,
that
yeah.
She looks at it and she says, oh, this
That's
is a needle
amazing.
case made of bone. And I felt so happy that I didn't chuck it away.
That is wonderful. So that you nearly confused for bakelite. Mine that I thought was bone. So it's so easily done, and that's crazy. Could you imagine how you'd feel now if
Absolutely
it
devastated.
had made the bin?
The more I think you collect bones and look
Yeah.
at it, the more familiar you are.
Yeah, I
and the
think
more
so
you just say,
too.
okay, now this is bone, this is not. But I believe at the beginning it's really confusing.
It is. It's really difficult. Even now, though, you know, even to this very day, it can be really tricky. As we're on needles, should we sashay into pin-related
Why not?
department? So what have we got here? And by the way, this is one of my most wanteds. This particular find.
This is a pinnace bone,
Yep.
and it takes the name because of, you know, it was used to make pins and to sharpen pins.
Yeah.
Which it is actually true. By
Oh.
coincidence, I have some here because
By
when I collect them,
coincidence?
I just
So mine go in my gloves, yours go in your knee pads. That could go dangerously wrong.
You're more organized than me, that's it. That's the first thing I have. So
Right.
it's called a pinner's bone because the way, first of all, you know, pins is something we Mudlarks collect all the time.
Exactly, we love pins.
You find them everywhere, more or less.
Yeah.
And they are handmade when they have this swirl on the top.
Yeah.
Now, the way they were making them, they would have a long thread of metal.
Yeah.
They would first wrap where the heads would be.
Yeah.
And then they would cut them, and then they would just have, you know, a piece of wire that wasn't pointy. So the pinner's bone was used to make them pointy.
Exactly.
So what the maker would do is take the non-pointy pin,
Yeah.
place it through one of these cavities, push with the
their thumb.
and then start sharpening it. And they would do it over and over. When they would use one side, they would turn. They would start doing it on the other side.
Yep.
And that's why very often we find that pinner's bone have many different sets. It's very difficult to know what a groove or a mark is the result of.
It's sometimes I find bone which has been through the water, and the term which I really like now, I mean, it's not anything that special, it's fluvial abrasion. So when the bone is rolling through the water, through the river, fluvium, that you see those, sometimes it has scraped against something and there are multiple marks that look like pinners, but it's just abutted and scraped.
That they scraped it
it's
all in the same direction. I agree.
But actually on some of these bones you see multiple man-made marks. You can tell, especially if it's on a pinner's bone. Interestingly, not too far from here there was a large pin making workshop in the 1500s. So maybe that would account for some of the many hundreds, thousands of pins we find here, and these bones as well. Now, what did I want to show you? Things that are not pinner's bones, but some people have said, oh, I think that might be a pinner's bone. So these are things that I found before. These bones with chop marks, or perhaps tally marks. I always collect these because it's quite hard to say. Hang on, let's get a couple of good ones on the go here. Now these are not pinner's bones, you can tell they're just rib bones, but with these marks here, some of them I think are just way too repetitive and purposefully made, and they're not, I don't believe they're portioning. Especially with something like this.
Yeah.
I think they're tally sticks for counting, keeping note of maybe selling of items, or even in a game.
I agree with you, and the reason I do is, I've been back in Italy, my hometown.
Yeah.
We still butcher pigs once a year over Christmas,
right?
And we carve the bones to scrape out all the meat.
Yeah.
Now, nobody would really spend so much time chopping and keep repetitively cutting a rib.
Yeah.
But actually, you would have the meat on this side, on this side or either side. You would simply scrape it with a knife.
It off, yeah.
And even if you were eating like a rib on your dish, there's no reason to make so many. So either it was used to sharpen a tool or something.
Could be, yeah.
Or it's a tally, for counting, as you say.
I mean, some of them, they're a bit kind of, I don't know, like this, that could be,
that they were trying to chop it.
And it took a few goes. But interestingly, the break is not clean at all. So it could be an apprentice butcher, let's say, or someone who's made a bad chop mark, a butchery mark, but it's snapped off here. So I don't know.
We've been mixing, like relatively modern things.
Yeah.
We're going back into pinner's bone, so we're talking about 15th to 19th century.
Yeah.
Some of these bones go really back in time.
Again, strangely, so we've got some here, I'm sure everyone knows what these are. We've got we've got fragments of lice combs, hair combs here with different sides. There's a thicker separation in the tines there, and these are thinner. What's interesting about some of these, now, is that bone?
Test. Dun, dun, dun.
The test for tortoise shell is to hold it up to the light.
And see if it's transparent.
But this is not transparent, but the colouring on it.
The colouring, but I believe it's bone.
Yeah, but the colour is strange, isn't it? It's this kind of, how is that? Could it be horn or is it bone?
I don't know if I don't even know if they were horn made, because the horn would be relatively thin compared to like
and how would they get the shape?
A proper shape. But you know, I agree with you. It's a very unusual color.
It's a strange one, isn't it? These, I would say bone, bone, bone. Now this is interesting. All of these marks here, and this is quite a thin. This is the thin side of this one, I think. I think these are pins trying to get nits or lice out of the combs.
You think so?
What do you think?
So, again, I have a theory. I've not read about it, and it can be the biggest lie.
And I haven't read about what I just said either.
Premise.
Yeah.
I believe that these were they're marks of the tool that was used to actually make the comb itself.
Right.
So they would first use something that was a bit coarser, and then when they reach this point that, as you see, it ends in a little triangle, almost in a pinch, I believe they were using probably a tiny wire.
A fine, right.
And they were like, maybe they would fix the comb like this, so if you can hold it, and they would take a wire. I'm making this up as we speak, but they would pull it this way, and they would just do this. And because they needed this holes, these cavities, to be really, really thin.
They were fine, weren't
they? Were fine, otherwise the lice would not be trapped.
But I mean, that is a lot, even compared to...
But you have these marks on all the combs I've ever seen, or most of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one that's most pronounced of mine. I don't... That one, a bit.
You can some of them.
Yeah. Well, I think my theory of someone picking out the nits is a bit more romantic. I think yours is maybe a bit more practical.
I think both, though.
Yeah.
I think it could absolutely be both. And somewhere you see the marks that are maybe less patterned.
Yeah.
It could be definitely someone trying to do that.
But actually, you're right. This is really kind of, I don't know. I kind of make it up as I go along sometimes with my theories. It's my kind of daydreaming mind, but
it's for all of us, it's a hobby, and I think the part of the fascination I have for mudlarking is that it's like it's a hobby where you try to understand what was happening at the time.
Exactly.
And you make up things as you go.
Yeah.
And you think, like, if I was making a comb, like, why would I make these marks?
And what would they be there for?
Yeah.
And I think actually that's a very good theory.
And sometimes my theory have been proven really wrong.
Don't worry about it, mine too.
You never know. Well, I think it's part of the fun.
It's the romance of it.
It is,
absolutely.